please press *1 if you'd like to ask a question. Today's call is being recorded. If you have any objections, please disconnect. I'm going to now turn the meeting over to Governor Tim Pawlenty. You may begin.
Great. Well, thank you, everybody. We're here today to sign the bill that was passed unanimously by the legislature today to provide needed flood relief to southern Minnesota and tornado relief to other parts of Minnesota from the June tornadoes. I'd like to start by just saying to the people of Minnesota who've been impacted by these natural disasters that help continues to be on the way. Minnesota has a proud and unbroken tradition of having neighbor help neighbor and community help community, and government at all levels rushing to the aid of communities and individuals and businesses who need help in the wake of these natural disasters. It's part of the Minnesota fabric. It is part of the Minnesota spirit, and it's in that spirit that the legislature convened today to provide their part of that needed and necessary relief to Minnesotans who are impacted by these natural disasters. I want to start by thanking the legislative leaders, Speaker Kelleher, Senator Poggemiller, Senator Senjum, Majority Leader Surdich, Minority Leader Zellers, and others. This was a very constructive and prompt discussion and agreement that we had to put this together. They worked constructively and positively and on a bipartisan basis, and I want to thank the legislative leaders for their constructive approach and tone and result. I also want to thank the many legislators and local officials who worked on this legislation. I know many mayors were concerned and were at the Capitol today and in the days and weeks leading up to this. We have many legislators and actually a couple mayors with us this afternoon as well. But many legislators, and I don't want to miss anyone, but they certainly include the chief authors of the bill, Ann Lynch in the Senate, House Chief Author Corey Kath, a number of other legislators from the region, including Senator Steve Murphy and Senator Mike Perry, Dan Scogan, Julie Rosen, Steve Draskowski, Patty Fritz, Mark Murdoch, Bob Gunther, Tony Cornish, and others. Mayor Walden from Wadena, Mayor of Zumbro Falls, other mayors as well. All of these and many others came together and served their community, led in challenging times, and will need to continue to do that in the weeks and months ahead. This process is not over yet. It will continue. The rebuilding process will continue. Minnesota is a strong state. Minnesotans are strong people. These communities are strong, and they will be rebuilt, and they will come back, and the state will do all that it can and continue to do all that it can to make sure that that happens. The bill today, you've had a chance, I'm sure, to go through it, but in short, it provides approximately $80 million of relief to these communities and to individuals as well. The bill is broken down into various components, including some general fund monies, some bonding monies, some special fund monies. The particular uses and sources of the funds are outlined for you and summarized for you in the news release that's been handed out, so I won't walk through all of that. But it's approximately $80 million of state relief coming from those pots of money. I'm going to sign the bill here, and then we'll stand for your questions so we can get the bill moving and the relief flowing. But I've got a big group here, so I'm not sure, but I want to open the door to have everybody speak. But maybe if there's just a couple who want to come forward, maybe I'll ask Senator Poggemiller or Speaker. Senator Lynch maybe can speak, and Kath, and if a couple from the minority want to speak too, and then we'll be on our way. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Governor. There was some really good work that happened in these halls today. And if there was ever a time to be proud of your state government, I think today was the day. And I hope at the end of the day today that there are families and communities all across Minnesota that feel some sense of hope, some sense of relief, and in part that at least one chapter of a very long journey has closed for them and we've moved on to the next stage. So my heartfelt thoughts go out to all of those communities, and I'm especially appreciative of the policymakers from both bodies, from both parties, who worked in conjunction, in tandem with the governor's office on what I think is a very comprehensive and good piece of work for the citizens of Minnesota. Thank you.
Thanks, Senator. Representative Gatt.
Well, I'd like to also echo what Senator Lynch and Governor Pawlenty have kind of stated here before us, and that is that good work happened today. When I left the classroom on Friday, I told my students that I wasn't going to be in class on Monday because we had some important legislation to take care of. And I said, as I'm teaching them the process, I said, you know, we can work in a bipartisan fashion, and there's times when we all come together, and we know that what it is that we're trying to achieve is for the betterment of all Minnesotans. And really today, that is what happened. So I'm excited to go back to my classroom and tell them that I did the easy work. I did the easy work of pushing that green button today, but now we move forward in a more difficult path, and that is to rebuild. But we have given the opportunity to rebuild, and I'm honored to be the chief author on the House side, but also honored to say that we came together, we led, and now we're leading the way to rebuild and bring us back to some sort of normalcy. And I look forward to being a part of that rebuilding as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Representative. Appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Maybe Representative Murdoch and Senator Perry.
Yeah, I think let's do two from the minority, and then we'll call it good, because otherwise we'll be here. Who wants to come? Jazz or something? Yeah, Mike, go ahead.
Well, I think what we saw here today was truly the spirit of all Minnesotans here in this great state, represented by their constituents, our constituents. We came together in a very good bipartisan way. Even though there were some bumps along the road, we did it for our constituents, and we should be proud because now, as you've heard, it's the rebuilding process that will move forward with that same Minnesota spirit. So it was a great day for Minnesota.
Okay, Representative Murdoch's on deck. There, oh, he's back there. I didn't even see you. Yeah, back here.
Hello there. When the governor came to Wadena, he stated that Minnesota will never walk away from a disaster, a disaster and leave the Minnesotans hanging. And true to the word, we passed this legislation today to take care of our Minnesota people that need the help. And I was just happy to be a part of it. I'm happy and proud to be a Minnesotan. And I just want to thank everybody, Representative Kath, from my hometown of Owatonna for all the hard work. And again, it is a great day for Minnesota, and we will rebuild. That's what Wadena is doing right now. We have recovered. We're rebuilding. Southern Minnesota will recover and rebuild. So it's a great day in Minnesota. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Representative. Okay, thank you. All right, we'll sign it. Okay, good work, everybody. Thanks. Thanks. Here we have some pens to pass out for those who help.
I need it.
And then we'll go ahead and take questions from the press on this topic, and if there are other topics, I'll stick around afterwards and handle those as well. Anybody have any questions for us? I'm sorry, I didn't hear that, Bill.
As Senator Murphy said on the floor, are you also disappointed that the individual assistance was not approved by the Obama administration?
Yes, we are disappointed in that bill, but it is somewhat formulaic as to whether you qualify or don't qualify. FEMA does, I think, a professional job in assessing it, and the thresholds that they use, they believe we didn't meet them in Minnesota in terms of the amount or type of damage. But you know, that is the process that they use, and that's the result that they've given us.
No appeal process on that?
There is an appeal process, Don, but if you appeal, then the individual assistance that's available through the SBA is suspended during the course of the appeal, and that can take months. And then also the percentage of appeals that are actually granted are almost none or very low. So what you end up doing is denying in the meantime, with winter coming, the SBA assistance, which may also then affect the Quick Start assistance the way the bill is now worded. And the likelihood of success of the appeal is remote.
I know you're going to be going on to other things before too long, but would you recommend that the legislature take a look at some bonding requests next session for what you have for the flood areas?
What we've learned from these natural disasters over the years is they usually take an initial relief and recovery effort in legislation. Then there's always some additional items that get discovered or added on later. If you look at the floods that you're very familiar with down in Roseau and the Northwest and the Red River Valley, years later, there are projects that get funded either still under the banner of recovery or in many cases mitigation. So I think you'll see that in this incident as well. I really want to compliment the legislature on something they did a few years ago, and Representative Pawlenty, I think, was the driving force behind it. But you know, the state had a very inconsistent record or pattern of how it responded to disasters over the last few decades. And of course, depending on who was in charge and the circumstances, it varied a bit, and that led to some unevenness in terms of the response. And under Representative Pawlenty's leadership, the legislature created a template, a standard template, so that in each case, the response is consistent or fairly consistent, and that really leads to better fairness and communities feeling like they got treated similarly to other communities. So you don't have people saying, well, they got it last time and we didn't, or vice versa. So I think it's a much better, over the last 3 or 4 disasters in Minnesota, that approach has served us really well in terms of consistency, fairness, setting expectations up front, matching expectations, communicating it to the people involved in the disaster response and recovery, knowing what the programs are, being familiar with them. There's a lot of value to all of that, and I think that was a very good reform that was forwarded a few years ago. Yeah. Well, the last one was the fastest. Now this one's the fastest. But, you know, if you look back, Mary, it's just changed as life has changed. The culture's changed. Everything's quicker now, and people's expectations are quicker. But if you look back at when special sessions occurred relative to disasters in the past, I mean, it was oftentimes many, many months later. But that's just not acceptable anymore, and so everything's been condensed. Everything's been compressed. When we had the southeast floods, I think it was early August, and we got the session in early September, something like that. And that was the fastest at that time, and now we beat that by a couple of weeks.
And how about the session itself? Majority of your research noted that it was probably...
Oh, you mean the session today? You mean being the fastest? Oh, I thought you meant how fast after the disaster.
It's the bipartisan tone, especially in light of, the national political strife, and a lot of these people are on campaign trail in the middle of battles, and it seemed like a bipartisan day.
Yeah, it was terrific. Again, the spirit and tone of the legislative leaders, the legislators who were involved, the local officials. I mean, an excellent piece of bipartisan, constructive, needed, helpful work for Minnesota.
Can this be a template for other things?
Well, it's been my experience. Yeah, I hope so, Don. But it's been my experience when you get into things like this. It's less partisan. If you get into some of the philosophical issues, it gets harder to have those bipartisan moments. But this is let's just be happy for this one.
Governor, Representative Hausman today during the debate raised the question. She read letters to the editor from her constituents about asking why you're willing to take federal money for flood aid, but not for health care.
Yeah, well, I think we'll save the non-flood questions for after our guests leave, so we don't get into all the back and forth, but I will answer that for you. Any other flood-related questions?
In your judgment, did it take too long for the federal government to approve this declaration? I believe Senator Perry alluded that he had some concern about that.
Well, I think Senator Perry, everybody wants everything to happen as quickly as they can, and the federal government was dealing with multiple disasters. They had a disaster down in Texas, and they were on the ground here. FEMA was on the ground here promptly after the disaster. They have to do some work to get the assessments done, the damage assessments, get it properly verified, get it properly, moved up the chain. So I think relative to how fast FEMA used to respond, it was, a decent and adequate response. But again, these things cannot be done in 24 hours. They are large programs with lots of work that has to be done. So FEMA has been a good partner for us in the last few years. I think before that, they had some issues, obviously, with Katrina. But in the last several natural disasters, FEMA has been a good partner for the state of Minnesota. They have generally responded promptly. They've been constructive. They've been helpful. And I think we need to say, they've been a constructive partner in all of this.
Governor, in terms of some of the schools that lost their homes or their businesses, realistically, when will they be able to build new homes, new business, or
Well, it depends, Tom, on their individual situation. So the disaster recovery centers are open. They can go now with the passage of the legislation, get logged in, so to speak. And if it's a small business, they can potentially get a small business assistance, or if it's a SBA housing loan or a quick start loan, I mean, past experience would tell you anywhere between weeks and months, depending on their own situation.
Governor, you may want to take some questions.
Anything else from the room, quick? Yeah. This won't appreciably change the cash flow, Martika. It's $36 million out of the general fund spread out over 6 months. I don't want to say it's de minimis, but it doesn't significantly change the picture. Let's go to the phones. Operator, any questions from those waiting on the phone on flood relief? Hello?
I have no audio questions.
I'm sorry, do you want to see if anybody has any, though? Or nobody's queued up?
No, everyone has.
Oh, everyone's disconnected. Okay, well, we're done. Okay. Thank you. Well, we'll disconnect also. Unless anybody else has anything else, we'll wrap up this part, and I'll hang around and answer other questions on other topics.
Governor, would it be possible to maybe talk with a couple of the mayors? One or two?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. Here's one of them right here.
Would you mind identifying yourself, please? Thank
Here,
you.
Judy, you want to step by the microphone so they can record it?
Sure.
Mayor? Get your haircut.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, you're waiting for me. Judy Radke from the City of Hammond.
How do you feel?
You know, I'm a little disappointed that we don't have FEMA, but basically I think what you guys did today was wonderful. You know, without it, I know I wouldn't be able to move forward. So my goal is to go back, tell my residents that this is what we're getting, and let's just move on. You know, it's not going to come easy, and it's not going to come overnight. But I can see myself a year down the road that a lot of this is just going to be behind me, and I'll regroup.
Just to clarify, Mayor, when you said that you're disappointed you didn't get FEMA, you're referring to individual
To the
assistance?
individual assistance, yes, yeah.
Mayor? Sorry.
Well, I'm Mayor Al Van Walker of the City of Zumbro Falls. I as well am disappointed in no IA from the federal government, but what has happened here today and what I've been a witness of today and stuff has been wonderful. It's going to be nice. A good share of my town was up here in buses today and watched what was going on, and to see how we were being represented and what was being done for them, so they helped understand what's going on. And like Judy said, it gives us the chance to go back and give them some answers. We're at this stop in things for a couple of days, and now we can go back and give them some answers and get them moving forward. It is the state of Minnesota. We all love it very much, but it's going to get cold in a few days. And we need to get these people some answers and get what they have left secured so they know what's going on and what's happening and get those answers. But Senator Lynch has been a great help to me, as well as the Homeland Security people and everybody else. From the minute the water breached the dike in Zumbro Falls, called the duty officer, and the help I have had holding us up with Zumbro Falls, Hammond, who our fire department covers as well, and the help that we got through the state of Minnesota and through the systems that have been set up has been wonderful. We were able to go through this without loss of life or nothing more than personal property, and we'll get more.
Mayor, you mentioned today that half of the homes in your town have been wiped out and most of the businesses have been. How long is it going to take for get back to something resembling normalcy there?
It will never be back to what it was. That's not possible. With the way flood ordinances are now and stuff, any houses that are downtown with a basement on them that have more than 50% damage have to be removed. That's 19 homes in my downtown. The businesses, the expense of making the businesses flood-proof, they can keep the basements, but there's criteria they have to meet, and it will depend on the expenses of that criteria based on each individual business as to whether or not they stay or decide to pack up and leave.
Mayor, that some businesses are going to pack up and leave?
Absolutely. They financially cannot afford to stay. I mean, they have to look at, we're looking at a town of average family age of 50 to 55. These people are looking at retiring, not reinvesting another $200,000 and starting over.
Could the state have done more to help those businesses to?
I think the state has stepped up appropriately. Like I say, I'm a little disappointed in the big brother that was supposed to be helping there too, but it's the state, I think, has done what's necessary here.
Mayor? Thank you.
Hi, I'm Wayne Walden. I'm the mayor of the city of Wadena. I'd like to first start off by thanking Governor Pawlenty for his support since the day after the tornado and through today. It's very evident that this is one Minnesota. I'd like to thank the legislative leaders who are here today for their support, my local legislators, Senator Scogan and Representative Murdoch, for their support in this endeavor. I firmly just have a whole new sense of really appreciative of how we can work in a bipartisan manner in the state. We're one Minnesota. And what does this mean for Wadena? This is huge. This 25% gap between FEMA and the total bill is now, we know where the money is going to come from. We don't have to take a look at the local cash flow accounts that are at a minimum right now because of disaster relief. We're writing out checks for this and that, and fund balance is almost gone. So this is a real good assurance for our residents of our area. And again, this is called the Wadena tornado, but in reality, this goes all the way from the very tip of southeastern Minnesota all the way up to Kitson County. So this is one state event. And the dollars that were allocated today will help all of those counties, all those communities, municipalities, be able to know where that 25% is going to come from.
Thanks, Mayor. The one thing on the individual assistance that I would suggest as a reform for the federal government is this. You know, they have these thresholds for how many homes have to receive what they call major damage. And there's a definition for that, and I'm paraphrasing, but it's basically, you know, wet basements don't count. You have to have, you know, water up to the floorboards or beyond, or some significant structural damage. And there's not a hard number there, but let's say, you know, it's 180 homes as the threshold, or 200 homes as the threshold. You know, if you're only have 100 homes that are damaged and you're one of those homes, for you it's major damage. And so, you know, in terms of fairness, if you compare yourself to a natural disaster that happened somewhere in the country, and they had 250 homes damaged, then they got individual assistance. The homeowner in Minnesota, if you happen to be part of something where only 50 homes got damaged, even though you might have the same amount of damage to your home, you don't get the assistance. So as we think about equity, as we think about fairness and consistency in responses to natural disasters, I think the state has ironed that out really well over the last 4 or 5 years in terms of the state's response. But that's not true in this FEMA individual assistance program. This threshold of, you know, whatever they use it, and I think it's probably somewhere around 200 homes, give or take, with major damage. You know, it doesn't treat homeowners who've had major damage equally. It just depends on whether enough of your fellow citizens also had major damage. And again, if you're an individual homeowner, for you, that's the whole ball game, or, you know, a big part of it. So I think that's something that they should change, and just say, if you got major damage, you got major damage, and regardless of whether it's 2 houses or 200 houses, here's what you get as a matter of fairness.
Have you talked to the president directly about this disaster?
On this disaster? Well, I've communicated to him in terms of the declaration request. I haven't talked to him by phone, but I communicated him directly by letter. Other questions or comments? Okay, we'll let our guests go, and I'll stick around for any other questions. Thank you, guys. Thanks for your good to see you. You look more rested.
He's got the red eyes. I caught up on sleep.
Good luck on your new job.
Well, if you have time for lunch, Governor, I'll buy you lunch. How about that? And he was going to
Yes. They were doing great work. Thank you, Governor. Great work. Thank you.
All right, Mark, we got you on your way. I'll wait for this one. That's right. That's right. All right, good to see you.
Chris, I'll give you this list. Jane, could you swing the door shut? Or Christy, could you swing the door shut there once everybody's out? Okay, and then to your question on healthcare versus flood. You know, as you think about what government does some important things, and it needs to be done on a prioritized basis. It needs to be done on those things that are most important, and of course, responding to natural disasters and emergencies is one of the most important priorities for government to do. That's very different than furthering or participating in a piece of healthcare reform that I think is misguided and something the country shouldn't do and doesn't need, in fact, will be counterproductive. Other questions? You look like you're ready to go. Well, maybe. I'm a co-host of it, I think, so I should be able to get there, I think, by, it starts at 7. I'm missing one thing right now, but.
So support him being in town rallying?
I'm sorry?
So you support him being in town?
Of course, yeah. No, as I hope you know, I've been a strong supporter of Tom Emmer for governor, and I've been at other campaign appearances or political appearances with Governor Romney and have a good relationship with him as well.
So we're not to interpret anything from your lunch date today, that you were supporting somebody else for governor?
My lunch date?
Yeah,
oh.
lunch date.
I had a lunch date today with Marty Seifert, but as you know, I was neutral in the governor's endorsement battle. No, I've known Marty for years. We're social friends, and it's just a good time to catch up.
Governor, you're taking your show off the air before you leave the office. Is there any particular reason, your radio show?
Well, it's just, you know, as the election unfolds in early November, not long after that, the attention understandably begins to focus to the governor-elect and his appointments and the transition process and the lead up to the session. So I think at that point it's a good time for me to step back and let the governor-elect begin to take center stage.
Okay. Thank you all.
Okay, thank you.